Welcome to the Nurturing Fathers Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men succeed at the most challenging and rewarding job they'll ever have, being a dad. Your hosts are Mark Perlman, the creator and founder of the Nurturing Fathers program, and his son, Corey Perlman, who facilitates the program at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary and is also a father of 2 young children. It's time to add tools to your Nurturing Fathers toolbox. Mark and Corey, take it away.
Hello, and welcome to session 4 of the Nurturing Fathers program. This is Corey Perlman. I'm here with my dad, Mark Perlman. Hey, Dad.
Hello, everybody. Good to be back.
And we are talking about men in power. Power and men in power, the elephant in the room when it comes to a lot of the challenges
I'd say so.
that we have as men, as dads, as all kinds of things. So
I almost didn't include it in the program. I had this list, a huge list of things I wanted to include, and this was one of them. And it comes from my background of having worked in child abuse, having worked with women in domestic violence situations, rape, all abuse of power and male power. And it's like, God, I don't know if I want to put this in a fathering program.
it's heavy.
It's kind of heavy, and it's like we don't talk about it much. And then I thought to myself, it's exactly why it needs to be in the program, because it's a really positive thing. But what we look at are the abuses of it and the extremes of it, and that's what gets the attention.
Well, to me, and the impact that the Nurturing Fathers program has had on me, and I would say on the participants that I've seen, the takeaway from this particular episode is by far the most profound and powerful takeaway of the entire Nurturing Fathers program. Not to make this too much of a pressure.
Glad I included it. I'll give you an example of that. I think back to one of the first, this may have been actually the pilot, very first time I tried this program out. And I had a family of 3 generations of men in this family, if you will. The father was there, his son was there, and the father's father, the grandfather, was there. And all 3 of them participated in this program. And the grandfather was a career Navy guy. And at the end of the program, we go around the room. After 13 weeks, we say, what did you get most out of it? And his hand was the first to go up. And he said, power over power too. Yeah. And I said, how come? He said, I was a Navy guy. I brought my kids up power over. We're not that close, although we've gotten better. With my grandfathering, I'm more of a power 2 guy. He said it's a whole new day. The single most useful concept.
Every single class I do, there's always a military man or 2 in there who says the exact same thing. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
They take what they learn in the military and they apply it to being a dad.
And it's not a judgmental thing. To run the military, power over probably is the way to go.
Absolutely.
It's a hierarchical structure.
Right.
Then they take it home. The question is, how well does that work on families, with families, and they have tremendous problems. So they're looking for another model that fits family that is not the power over military hierarchy.
So the best way to describe it is, let me just throw out a situation, and then you kind of tell me a little bit about what you see as sort of wrong with the situation. A very, very common situation that probably happens. I'm going to use my daughter Talia as an issue, cleaning her room, which is just an ongoing thing for us. And, I walk into the room, it's a mess. She's sitting there. And my first instinct is to say, Talia, clean your darn room or else. And I walk out of the door. And if I get back in this room and it's not clean, that's your arse, or whatever the case may be. What's wrong with that picture?
I think it's fine. The question, what's wrong with it, puts me on the spot, which I don't like to be on. But since I'm on the spot, I wouldn't say wrong. I'd say that will have consequences. And then there are alternative ways of doing it, which had different consequences. The consequence to that is basically it leads to maybe rebellion and resistance, in that she's a very independent, powerful young 8-year-old in and of herself. I know your frustration, and I know your goal is good to get her to clean her room up. My concern would be is she is feeling pushed upon by doing it, and basically may rebel or even become revengeful under the radar. Here's another alternative. The other alternative is to sit in a bed with her and say, look, we've talked about this a whole bunch of times. Why do you think it's important for us to have your room clean? Do you think it's just a parent thing, or do you think have a conversation, see where she goes with it, and say, Talia, with all the times me and your mom have asked you, what's the problem here? Why aren't you getting to it? Wherever that conversation might lead, see what the inroads are, because what we want to do is empower her to get this job done, make it an internal thing on her part. Because the last thing you want your daughter to learn is to respond to male power wherever it is with an immediate yes. Not that she's going to oppose you, but that is not the lesson that we want here. We don't even want that for our son. There's dangerous uses of power in these kids' world, especially when they get to teenagers. So obeying power wherever it is, especially if it comes from a strong voice or a male voice, is a questionable goal. What I do want her is to basically understand that it's important to us and see how we can transfer that importance to her. See how we can motivate her. What would it take? And why isn't this as important to you as it is to us? And how can we get to this joint goal?
So part of the reason for me personally of why it is not the way I want to do it is there's a winner and a loser. If I come in with exactly what I just said, you will clean your room or else, there's a clear winner and a clear loser.
Who's the loser?
She is. And in her mind, she's the loser as she's cleaning her room. And that's not what I want. There has to be a better way, right? And so that's power over. Power two, there's a winner and a winner. I get the room clean, which is kind of what my goal is. And Talia gets to choose to clean her room, which is her goal to get to whatever she wants to do next. And so the power two is to give her a choice, the ability to be able to make the choice that she wants to make, that independence, that control, right? So instead of coming in there and saying, Talia, clean your room or else, Talia, the room needs to get cleaned. And I know that you want to go out and play with your friends. So if you clean your room, you are allowed to go out with your friends. If the room's not clean, you can't go out, or whatever the case may be.
It's a great example.
Talia gets to sit there and make a reasonable choice and say, all right, fine, I'm going to clean my room because I want to go out and play. She does it because she wants to do it. Now, it doesn't work that perfectly, obviously, and I'm aware of that. But that shift of power over, I am demanding you or else, or, I'm the mean, nasty dad, to is there I hate to use the word negotiation, but is there a way for us to both leave here winning?
Right. To somehow transfer the power to her that she wants to do it for some reason. Choices and consequences in parenting language. It's one of the most powerful tools we have. We'll talk more about it when we get to discipline in a couple of weeks. But if you do A, this will happen. If you do B, this will happen. In your case, go out, play with your friends, clean up your room, or don't clean up your room, don't go out. It's up to you. And then she is empowered. And if she doesn't clean up her room, she doesn't go out. So she loses something, but the power has been shifted to her, and in a very positive way. It's very hard to force your children to do anything, or certainly to force another adult. And then you do have to question, what are the end products? What are the consequences of forcing others? And you're right. It's winners and losers. It's my way or the highway.
Not only is it very hard, in some ways it's impossible.
It's impossible.
If you think about, eating peas, you cannot physically force your child to eat peas.
Right. Or anybody who's tried it with a 6-month-old or something.
Right. I mean, you physically can't. I mean, they'll make them sick. You can try verbally with everything you possibly can, but at the end of the day, it is a choice. And this is the thing about, so let me just be very clear with everybody here. Power over versus power two. Power over is, one winner, one loser. It's us controlling the situation and forcing our hand or forcing their hand. Power two is, giving a reasonable choice to whomever you're dealing with and allowing them to hopefully make the right decision. And I will tell you, it is the most profound change in my world as a parent that there is in the Nurturing Fathers program.
And also just a couple more things about defining power over power versus power two. Power over is a me versus you, as well as my way versus your way. Power two is a we. Somehow we get together around this and we lay out these choices. And she has feeling the power to make her choice. Power over is always about control. And it's a hierarchy, top-down hierarchy, who's in control. And power two is more about helping. How can I help my daughter get this room clean? How can I involve myself in a way that will motivate her? Motivation as opposed to obedience. Power over is all about obedience. Power two is more about affirming others' power and using it in the direction we would like it to go. Now, in our culture, Corey, which form of power do you feel is the most commonly associated with men?
Power over. I mean, yeah, that's part of the challenge is that we see it. It's mentioned the military. The guys always talk about the prison. The guard should really be a part of this, program. Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that power over versus power two, there's opportunity with power two in all facets of the world. Now, again, like you said, there's a place for power over, clearly. And we're not denying that. And we're not even saying that there's not necessarily a power over possibilities at times with your kids. This is not a perfect system.
Yeah, if your kid is running into the street at the age of 2, you got to grab the child and pull him off that street.
Yeah, you're going to make the decision for
yes, yes, absolutely.
When there's danger. But gosh, I think about this decision-making tree in your child. And every time you help them make the right decision, you're sort of building roots within that tree so that at some point down the road, you're not going to be there for them to make these hopefully wise and positive decisions. So the more decisions they can make on their own that are the right ones that's got to be the right thing to do for our kids.
Bingo. That's a beautiful way to say it. That is really the bottom line, is we want to inculcate in them, to give them the ability to make good decisions for themselves in the world. That is what really the arc is, from 2 years old to teenager, going out in the world by themselves. If we have a son or daughter at 17, 18, 19, going out in the world still looking for the answers from someone else, still looking for permission from someone else, still listening to other people from doing right from wrong, they're in trouble. We need to somehow give them the ability to make good decisions, right from wrong, good or bad, positive or negative, desired behavior, undesired behavior. And by feeding that muscle of decision-making, just like you say, if you do this, here's a consequence. If you do this, here's a consequence. You're feeding that decision-making muscle, and then they live with the consequence. So it's all learning. It's all a lesson. So much of fathering, mothering, and parenting is teaching. It's teaching. And what are the consequences and outcomes that we want? What are we teaching toward? In this case, to have a son or daughter who can make their own decisions in the world, who know the difference between right or wrong.
I remember this distinct example of, when I was a kid and seeing this dad interacting with another kid, and the kid had hit another kid, and the dad ran up into the sandbox and smacked the kid and said, "We don't hit." And it was just like, I remember even as a kid of just like this sort of weird moment of just sort of watching this parent, model what you essentially just told them that you don't want them to do. So in this case, this power over, oftentimes when I'm power overing, and I do it, I fall into that trap sometimes, I'm modeling behaviors that I really don't want to do with my kids. I'm yelling, I'm angry, I'm threatening, oftentimes empty threats. You will not go to that sleepover, or you're not coming with us to the, whatever. And then I think to myself, yes, she is, you can't do that.
And, there's shortcuts that we all take, and they're reactive.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge believer in reactive parenting. I've spent enough time doing it myself. It's out of control. Mm-hmm. The kid is in control. The kid does something, boom, I react. The kid does that again, boom, I react. No, I want to take a step back and say, what do I want here? What is discipline about? What is power about? How does this work? What are the outcomes I'm looking for? I want empowered children in a healthy way, not brats who take over things and push other people around. Kids who have the power to know right from wrong, make their own decisions. That is a full childhood arc of development that this is an important part of the discussion too. The way we relate to our spouse is another part of this issue, because most of the issues about abusive women, family violence, or whatever you want to call it, spousal violence, are power over issues. When the guy is fully power over and he gets frustrated, it's not working, or someone is bucking it or pushing it, all he can do is double down on it or triple down on it. And that's when things can get dangerous and people can get hurt. The other thing I want to say about this, Corey, which is real important, is it's not an either or. Power over is one style of power, and power two is another style of power. I think the question we have to ask is what plays better for families, and what basically works better. How does it work, again, is the key response. So, and all of us as men, and I appreciate you admitting to it before, have elements of power over for sure, and also have inklings and elements of power too. So we're moving on that continuum one way or the other. If someone's going to attack me in the street, I'm going into power over mode. You with your jiu-jitsu, definitely go in power over mode, whatever you do. I've seen it in action, actually.
For another episode.
But with our children and with our spouses and with our family, you have to decide whether power over power two is really the best game and the best way to proceed.
Well, you mentioned in a previous episode too, in addition to the negatives to power over, is if you have that relationship with your spouse, the modeling that your daughter, or even your son, but especially your daughter is seeing, like you just said, it makes it seem okay, that this is normal, that the man, commands over the woman or whatever the case may be. And we don't want that for our daughter. We want them to be, if they get into a relationship where all of a sudden power over is the primary way the man, reacts or treats her, we want that to be shocking, shock to the system. Get the hell out.
It's not for me.
Not for me. But if they see it, growing up in the house, that's just another, example of that.
The other thing too, is it's all win-lose. And you say power over makes winners and losers. And, I always want to be in the winning. Well, that means I got a family of losers here, from my spouse to my kids. And is that really what I want to create?
Well, what I've learned in this trial and error with both my wife and I doing this long enough is power two is more beneficial to the family and overall a better strategy for me. It is also more difficult. It makes me be more strategic. It takes more time. It takes more patience. It takes more creativity. So again, you said you don't like to be put on the spot. So I'm going to go ahead and put you on the spot. What are some things that we can do to make power two easier? And I'll tee you up for one. One of the things that you've helped me with is figuring out my kids' currency, figuring out what they want. What are the privileges that they have to earn? If you say to a kid, I know you want to go out with their friends and they're kind of introverted and they really don't, then that power two is not going to work so well,
Right. Well, just as an overview before I get to a specific question, being a nurturing father and being the best father we can be is going to take work and reflection. So this is just one piece of it. It's true for anger too. It's true for play. It's true for dealing with our feelings. It's self-reflection. It's work. It's such an important job, though. The work is worth it because the outcomes are magnificent. You see your children becoming the human beings that you hope they would be. And as you grow in these ways, if I've grown in these ways, Corey, as I've seen you grow in these ways, we really feel better about ourselves and things work better. Our marriage works better. Our kids work better. So the power over power two thing, I think the first thing is conceptually understand it. Don't feel judged by it. It's not good or bad, right or wrong. We're all weaned and brought up on power over. So the challenge is, how do I bring power two to different situations? And I think probably we start with our spouses. And to what degree are we an equal couple? To what degree do we want to be an equal couple? Is there one boss here and one follower? Is there one leader and one follower? And you need her input on that. If a family chooses to construct itself over a leader and a follower, I don't argue with that. That's their choice. So this is not an ethical thing or a moral thing. But in my case, I grew up in the time of the 60s and 70s with women finding their own power, women going to work, women feeling that they needed to express their own power more. I welcomed it. I said, okay, let's check this out. But what we did was me and your mom divided up our roles. I did certain things. I took care of the cars. I took care of this. And she did other things. And we didn't do everything the same. But what we did is we respected each other and divided things up so that there was choice. She had her choice in making decisions, again, with our spouse, is that they are heard, they are listened to, we are heard, we are listened to. The beauty of compromise, which we'll probably deal with in another episode of this, is a very power two kind of thing. And what that leaves a couple with is, instead of a winner and a loser, two people who felt heard, felt understood, felt valued, and feel that their input was respected, even if things don't turn out exactly the way we originally thought. Compromise doesn't, but the process was such that it makes the marriage and relationship stronger. That's what we want. So with our kids, you gave the perfect example. It's like, I don't want my kids to just be good followers. I want them, if not to be leaders, I'd love them to be leaders, but to be able to make the right decisions, to be able to do well in the world. So I've got to share power with them and nurture their power in a positive way. No, you don't have the power to throw food on the table. We can't do that. So we'll do time out or we'll do some consequence. You can't do that. You can't be part of this family's dinner and throw food at the table. You can't curse at the table. You can't do that. We'll have a consequence. So the authority is there, but it's always rendered is, if you continue to throw food, you and I are going to sit here. We're not going to have dinner together. If you stop throwing food, going to eat together and have fun, continue this.
It's the vocabulary that I think is key there. It's if, then, or if, when, which I think is, and you just nailed it on the head. If you continue to throw food, then you'll be asked to, blah, 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 blah. Right. And then with the power two, if you're ever, worried about whether or not you're doing power two, it's if then. If you clean up your room, then you can go out and play.
Let me give you an example of a much older kid. Curfew, it's a beauty. Yeah. Say you're 14, 15, or 16. You got an 8 o'clock curfew. Here's what the rule is. Mm-hmm. You go out. If you come home by 8 o'clock, everything's good. If you have to stay somewhere later, something's common, I need a phone call. If you don't call me and you just come in an hour or two later, you lose a night this weekend to go out. So say my son is out there, he comes home 8:45, he's got a long story to tell about the car getting a flat tire, breaking down. I say, wow, I'm really sorry that happened. I know that must have been a mess. And I'm sorry you chose to give up Friday night. What do you mean I chose to give up Friday night? I got a first dance Friday night. No. When you didn't call me, you know the rule. You chose to give up Friday night. Me and your mom worry a lot of stuff. I had no idea where you were. So Friday night, we're going to be.
Gotta stick to it. Gotta stick to it. Jess gets me on that all the time. I'm a softie, man. I want to just, it's okay, you know. But you gotta. It shows
them that they have the power.
Yes.
To make the right choices, and the world works out better when you do. Not so good when you don't.
The other thing that I like about that situation, and we'll talk more about this when it comes to family rules, team rules, is everybody's understands the rules. Sometimes it's even showcased on the wall or something
Absolutely.
like that. And that makes it more of a team sport. You can honestly feel bad for them. You know, I know it's probably harder for those of you who have teenagers, like, yeah, like try that out real well. But sometimes when, you know, Milo doesn't get some device time that he wants because he didn't do something, I feel bad for him. I'm sorry, buddy, man, but you know the rules. You know, I mean, it's, you know, I know, you know, I feel for you, bud. I mean, we're in this together. I want you to have device time, man, but you didn't make the right choice. So we're going to try again next time.
I'll give you another example. That same daughter or son that came home late and didn't call, that may really piss me off. It may make me angry. So they come home, open the door, boom, red-faced. I'm in a rage.
Yeah.
What the hell? Where were you? How many times do I have to tell you? You know, there's not a whole lot of learning that's taking place there. What they see is a big angry dad who's angry, and they obviously screwed up, but it's just not as effective as a disciplinary teaching tool as is, look, you blew it. You're going to have to give up your Friday night. And the beautiful phrase that I would use is, you chose to give up Friday night when you didn't make that call.
Yeah.
And it puts the responsibility squarely where it deserves. What we're trying to raise is responsible, respectful children.
Yeah, you're not the big bad evil parent in that case. You know, they chose to make that, you know, and most of the time we all agreed on this deal. I mean, that you were part of this discussion, you know. And the other thing I like about the Nurturing Fathers program is that we also talk a lot about positive consequences. So, hey, you hit your curfew, you know, 3 months in a row, we can talk about extending that curfew,
Absolutely.
you know, that kind of thing, and giving you more opportunities. But the other thing I mentioned, I'm not sure it's actually in the program, just something I've sort of picked up from other people or whatever, but figuring out what your kids' currencies are is also really important. You know, my kids couldn't be more different with that. You know, Milo is just like devours video games. You know, it's a big deal to him. Talia could care less about video games. For her, it is social time with her friends. There is nothing more, you know, important to her than that. So, you know, it's one of those things that I can use as a part of this power to get her attention. You know, it's just not going to work.
Use what's important to them.
Yeah, it's their currency, whatever they really want.
I will talk a lot more about that. We'll have a whole podcast on discipline.
Yes.
It's a large topic, so my guess is we'll go back and forth, but we'll give you the whole overview from Nurturing Fathers on discipline, which is an interesting take, because what we use really is team sports as our model.
It's a great one. Let me just kind of take you back to here for a second. I know we bounced around a little bit, but I do want to give you a chance to talk about, you know, the power, you know, and with men, you know, and what do we really need to be worried about when it comes to power over why, you know, in our culture, in our society, what you've seen kind of over the years and things of that nature. But like, what is the big kind of scary aspect of us going to this side of power over it, just in our culture as a whole? I mean, why is that happening?
I think the bottom line is, if the view of masculinity that you're talking about defines that you always have to be in control, you always have to be right, you always have to be in charge, you always have to be the top dog, that's a power over model. It's a one-dimensional approach to life, problems, and relationships. When that begins to screw up or fails, when that's not succeeding, if you have a strong-willed wife or she decides she wants to go to graduate school or go out to work, you're put up against situations where you don't have easy answers to, except to double down on that power over. And that's when things can get ugly. That's when you say things you wish you hadn't said. That's when you might hit somebody, which you knew you didn't want to do. That's the problem with that. You're locked into a control model that is just not going to work in the world. It's also very stressful on you. It's hard to think you need to be right and in charge of everything all the time. You know, so I think giving men this other model to look at and then choose their place, and when it works, all it's doing is, like everything else, Nurturing Fathers is expanding our bag of tools and tricks. So we have a little bit more to deal some. Power to is a more family-friendly model, and we can talk more about that. It creates more of the relationship with our spouse that I think we want and respect, that perhaps she wants these days. And I think it has better outcomes for our kids, because blind obedience is not the end product that I want for my children.
That's a great point. Yeah. And it breeds fear, resentment, and a lot of things that, I think kids struggle with as they get older, is if their entire fabric of their relationship with their parents was power over, and that's a really scary model. So as I mentioned, hopefully you guys feel this as much as I've felt this and continue to feel this as I go through the program and I do it with my guys in the prison, is just the power of this tool, no pun intended, of power over transitioning to power to, and the ability to allow your children to win and still get the same desired result as you were looking for when you entered that conversation with them. It's just, I can't tell you how profound that is. And I hope you take it, run with it, enjoy it, use it, and let us know what you think about it. Again, check us out on Facebook, fb.com/nurturingfathers. Dad's website is nurturingfathers.com. Definitely, leave comments and such. We're in episode 4 now, the Nurturing Fathers podcast. We'd love to know what you think. If you have questions, comments, we'd love to know that you're out there listening and that we're just not talking to ourselves. So with that, I say goodbye, and we'll see you guys on session 5 of the Nurturing Fathers podcast.
See you next time. Bye. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Nurturing Fathers podcast. Have questions or comments? Join the conversation at facebook.com/nurturingfathers or email us at nurturingfathers@gmail.com.